we have 2 days left, today and tomorrow, for our early archery season here. And I wanted to circle back and talk a little bit about why I think Wishbone and I were successful this year with getting the bucks that we got. And I have some notes, and I've been thinking about this a lot, of what I really wanted to say and what I truly believe made us successful this year. So I'm going to go off these notes, and I want to kind of take you through our season, just the highlights of why I think we were successful this year. The first thing I want to start off with is low hunting pressure. So that's, for Amy and I, that's number one on our priority list. Every single time, if it's a morning hunt or an evening hunt, the first thing we do is we go on our phones and we use windy.com. It's a free app. It shows the wind direction. And we look at what's the wind direction and what stands can we hunt for that wind direction. Can we get into those stands without bumping deer on that day or that sit? Is there enough wind to mask our entry and our exit? How are we going to get back out that evening or that morning? What's the strategy there? And it's always revolves around low hunting pressure, not bumping deer, not letting deer get downwind of us. We like to move around a lot too. So kind of my goal is every 4 or 5 days. So I don't like to sit a stand consecutively, and I like to give a minimum of 4 or 5 days. Now, that's not always the case. If we feel like we got in really clean, had a good hunt, everything was in front of us and got out, we might actually sit it back to back 2 days in a row. But don't kid yourself. You go in during the daylight, everything looks perfect. You walk out, at quitting time, let's say in an evening hunt. Overnight, when you're not there, there's probably deer walking over your track and smelling something. They know you've been there. So even if your hunt or if your sit seems like it was perfect, it's probably never perfect. So we like to bump around as much as we possibly can, which brings me to my next point. We hunt a lot. So I do a lot of observation sits, so does Amy, and we sit stands that we know on any given day or any given hunt is probably not going to get us a target buck. It's probably not going to put a big buck in front of us. We know that. And I want to say upwards of a third of my hunts this year were done in spots that were either observation sits or they were in spots where I just wanted to back away, hunt in a tree stand, maybe go for a doe, where I knew I could not put pressure on the deer that we were hunting, let's say because we had a week straight of north winds and we just didn't want to go back to our same spots over and over again. So I think for us that helps a lot, is just keeping hunting pressure low. We don't drive our four-wheelers and vehicles into our stands. The path that we take where we walk is a lot of times through cow pastures. Cut beans is usually okay, but it's trying to make sure that a fallow field, I want to go back to that, one of our really good morning spots is walking through a fallow field, doesn't have a lot of deer activity. So our access is good. Our exit's good. Deer are always in front of us, and we try just not to bump deer and move around a lot. The other thing we did this year is normally by the end of October, I start ramping up how aggressive I am. And one of the ways I do that is I start hunting mornings. And this year, I want to say I only hunted 4 or 5 mornings. That's kind of a guess during the whole season. And that's because just kind of uncharacteristically, we had very little wind this fall by us, very little wind. In a lot of my morning spots, I feel I need a 10 to 15 mile an hour breeze to get in there without bumping deer, to get in there quietly. And we just didn't have it. There was a lot of mornings I got up, set the alarm for 5 o'clock, and was going to go in, and it was just too quiet. So I just went back to bed. I just bunked it for another hour or two. There was a couple mornings where I went in at like 9 o'clock. So that's another example of keeping pressure low, which I think helps Amy and I. The last thing I want to say, it's about low hunting pressure. So I like to use this concept of perpendicular access. So you walk straight in where your stand's going to be, and then maybe you cross a fence, maybe you cross a ditch, whatever it's going to be, but you walk straight in and you go up a stand and everything's in front of you, as opposed to having to walk parallel to cover for 100 or 200 yards or maybe even a quarter mile to get up in your stand, and then everything's in front of you. So I talk about this a lot. So with my second buck, that never would have been possible had Lily and I put in this bridge. That it never would have been possible. And I want to say, and this is not cutting anybody down, but most hunters would not do that. Most hunters would have just crossed the beaver dam that was there. They would have walked a couple hundred yards and they would have gotten their stand. Or they would have relocated the stand closer to the beaver dam, and that's where they would have hunted. Most hunters are not going to go through the effort to, on a 90-degree day, to drop a telephone pole and put boards across and make that access. And I think, I don't know, you'll never know for sure, but I think that bridge for my second buck was key to me killing that buck in that little bitty 10 or 15 acre bedding pocket down one side of bedding, because I was able to go in perfectly perpendicular, just cross the ditch, get up in my stand, and that big buck came in that night. So I think going the extra mile for sure on my second buck, I think paid off. Let's talk a little bit about, you hear the first time in is always the best for a hunting spot. And I used to think this. I used to think the first time I would hunt a stand is always the best. And I think there is some merit in that. But what I have found is, over the years, if I can really have good access and keep the deer in front of me, so everything is out in front of me, wind in my face, and get down, let's say on an evening hunt or a morning hunt, and I'm walking out and I'm not bumping deer, it doesn't have to be the first time in. So just to kind of run the course here, Gummy, when I shot Gummy, I think that was my third sit. Now we have two stands in that area that are pretty close together. So between Amy and I, that was probably the fifth time we were in that little spot when I killed Gummy. My second buck, that was the third time I sat that spot. With Amy's buck, that was her third time that she sat that spot. So if you are very intrusive and you're going into the center of your timber, in the center of your cover, and you're getting very close to bedding, and you're being very aggressive, I think that your first time in, you've heard people say that before, I think is probably pretty accurate. But Amy and I are able to get away with killing bucks, mature bucks, on our fourth and fifth and sixth sit in that same stand, because we're so much using that perpendicular access and on the edge of cover instead of going way in deep. And that allows us to hunt more times, get in more reps during the hunting season, and keep our farms fresh. The last thing I want to talk about a little bit about low pressure is, there's one thing you didn't see on my weekly updates. You probably just didn't see much of it at all, and that was hunting over food. So I think there was a couple times this year where I put myself in a position to maybe harvest a doe, but it was an observation sit over cut corn. But other than that, all the bucks that I saw this year, and a lot of my best sits, had nothing to do with sitting over food. So a lot of times I was hunting a bed to feed pattern, but I was way away from destination food source. So I think that's key, and that's going forward. We do that every year now. We rarely plant food sources that will directly hunt over. Maybe a transition plot here and there. It's kind of a pass-through plot, but we don't hunt our destination food not until late season. So if you hunt in a high-pressure area, or you have a hard time keeping deer on your property, and you're hunting over, what I would call a destination food source, you should probably consider not doing that anymore. I think that's another key to keeping pressure low on your property. The second key, I think, to our success is we hunted a lot. So I made a video, it's maybe about a year ago now, that talks about the 3 keys to consistently killing big bucks. The second key to consistently killing big bucks is you have to put your time in. You have to hunt. You can't just hunt, a couple weekends a year, or take 1 week of vacation and maybe you hunt 5 days in a row. It's pretty tough to do. So Amy and I want to say I wrote some notes down here. I want to say I got 45 hunts in this year. About. I didn't go back and count. So 45 either morning or evening sits added up. And Amy was right around 30. So we hunted a lot. We hunted when it was hot. We hunted when it was warm, when it was windy, when it wasn't windy, full moon, new moon, all this, you know, goofy stuff. You can get these hunting apps now that tell you when to hunt, which I think I think it's a scam. But our key to our success year in and year out is we put in the time and we hunt. We hunt every day we can. And if it's hot out, that doesn't deter me from hunting. If it's hot out and there's no wind and I can't get to my stand without bumping deer, that'll keep me from hunting. But the weather itself, warm or cold or dry or wet or rain or any of that stuff, the weather itself is not going to deter me from hunting and going to a specific stand location. A little bit of follow-up on that. Both of my bucks, both Gummy and my surprise buck, both of them were shot on evenings when it was unseasonably warm. So very warm. My second buck, you know, we're looking at mid-November, and I went in wearing nothing but my base layers, and I was still pretty warm. I shot him with a base layer on and maybe my jacket. So don't let a warm day or a hot day or something, you know, something else that you've read or saw keep you away from hunting your best spots. Just don't do it. And the last thing is, you know, really when I make this video, I'm supposed to dazzle you with all these techniques and this is how we do this and this is how we do that, and we use this product and we use this food plot seed, and I got this bow and, you know, this camouflage and scent removal equipment and stuff, and I'm supposed to dazzle you with all that stuff. But really the third key, so the first two keys was low pressure. In low pressure hunting techniques, that's free. That's how you hunt. That's decisions you make every day. The second one is we hunt a lot. We're in the field a lot to get our eyes and get us in front of a big buck. The third one is there's big bucks here. That's the third key to us consistently killing bucks every year is there are big bucks where we hunt. Now some of that I can say is because of our hard work, because we completely bust our butts in the off season with habitat work and hinge cutting and putting in fences, and, you know, just the list is kind of endless on that. But the bottom line is there's still big bucks where we are. Some of them we grow, some of them we attract and we keep them on our property and we grow, like Gummy. But some of them we don't. The second two bucks that we shot, mine and Wishbones, those were bucks that we didn't even know. We never had them on camera. We didn't even know they existed, but they showed up. Now part of that is I can say, well, it's because, you know, I'm so good at low hunting pressure and stuff. And I think maybe that's a little bit true, but they still have to be there. So that's the third key to us being successful this specific year was there were two big bucks in the area that we didn't even know of. And because we put enough time in and we kept our hunting areas fresh, we were able to take them. So that really is a wrap on this year's early archery season. So now I'm just waiting out, and I have been for the last week and a half, our gun seasons. I'm putting no pressure on our properties at all. I have 2 cameras right now. They're cell cameras that the batteries are dead and we're not getting any pictures, and I'm not even going to go in and change batteries. I don't care. It doesn't matter at this point what the camera shows. So the whole concept right now is low hunting pressure, peak habitat, peak food. I got some standing corn and I got some standing beans. I don't want to be anywhere near any of my properties, and we'll see what shows up for the late season. Lily has a late muzzleloader tag. I'll be buying a late muzzleloader tag, and we'll see what happens here. I know right behind the house, this buck, and we'll talk more about him for the muzzleloader hunt. But this buck that I passed up during late muzzleloader last year, he just showed back up. We're almost into December here, very late November into December. And I never saw him last year during archery season, but I passed him up during late muzzleloader, and he's a beautiful 10-pointer, and he's back again. So that's a welcome surprise. So we'll see if we can't keep him on our farm, on our standing corn right here behind the house, and see if we can't get a shot at him. So stay tuned. End of December, I'll start putting out some videos about our late muzzleloader hunt.